Jayo Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanacharya Yamuna Tira Vanacharya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Kunja Vihari Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasa Tato Jayamudhirayet. So we're reading today from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 29, verse 11 and 12. 13 already? Yes. Okay, very good. Kannst du für Kishori-Kundi übersetzen ins Deutsche? You can translate into German, no? You can translate now? Okay. Okay. Ich glaube, sie kommt zu dir. Maybe if you give them the spot. Yeah, you can combine. Otherwise, translation is too close here front. Thank you. Haribol. Oh yeah, there. Haribol. Okay, please repeat. Salokyam Sharshti Samipya Sarupya Katvam Api Utam Diyamanam Na Grihnanti Vina Mat Sevanam Janaha Salokya Shasti Samipyam Sarupyaikatvam Apyatva Apyutam Sarupyaikatvam Apyutam Diyamanam Nagrinanti Vinamatsevanam Janaham Salokya Shasti Samipyam Sarupyaikatvam Apyutam Diyamanam Nagrinanti Vinamatsevanam Janaham Salokya Shasti Samipyam Sarupyaikatvam Apyutam Diyamanam Nagrinanti Vinamatsevanam Janaham. Ladies, somebody else? Word by word. Salokya. What does it mean? Salokya? Salokya. Living on the same planet. So maybe you recognize this verse actually is about the different types of liberation. So the first one, Salokya, living on the same planet. Then Shashti, having the same opulence. Samipya, to be a personal associate. Sarupya, having the same bodily features. Ekatvam, oneness. Api, also. Uta, even. Diyamanam, being offered. Na, not. Grinanti, do accept. Vina, without. Mat, my. Sevanam, devotional service. Janaha, pure devotees. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. A pure devotee does not accept any kind of liberation. Salokya, Sharsti, Samipya, Sarupya, or Ekatva, even though they are offered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. Lord Chaitanya teaches us how to execute pure devotional service out of spontaneous love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Shikshastakam, he prays to the Lord, O Lord, I do not wish to gain from you any wealth, nor do I wish to have a beautiful wife, nor do I wish to have many followers. All I want for you is that in life after life, I may remain a pure devotee at your lotus feet. There is a similarity between the prayers of Lord Chaitanya and the statements of Srimad Bhagavatam. Lord Chaitanya says, in life after life, indicating that a devotee does not even desire the cessation of birth and death. The yogis and empiric philosophers desire cessation of the process of birth and death, but a devotee is satisfied to remain even in this material world and execute devotional service. It is clearly stated herein that a pure devotee does not desire ekatva, oneness with the Supreme Lord, as desired by the impersonalists, the mental speculators, and the meditators. To become one with the Supreme Lord is beyond the dream of a pure devotee. Sometimes he may accept promotion to the Vaikuntha planets to serve the Lord there, but he will never accept merging into Brahman effulgence, which he considers worse than hellish. Such a katva, or merging into the effulgence of the Supreme Lord, is called kaivalya. But the happiness derived from kaivalya is considered by the pure devotee to be hellish. The pure devotee is so fond of rendering service to the Supreme Lord that the 5 kinds of liberation are not important to him. If one is engaged in pure transcendental loving service to the Lord, it is understood that he has already achieved the 5 kinds of liberation. When a devotee is promoted to the spiritual world, Vaikuntha, he receives 4 kinds of facilities. One of these is Salokya, living on the same planet as the Supreme Personality. The Supreme Person in his different planetary expansions lives in innumerable Vaikuntha planets, as the chief planet is Krishna Loka. Just as within the material universe the chief planet is the sun, in the spiritual world the chief planet is Krishna Loka. From Krishna Loka, the bodily effulgence of Lord Krishna is distributed not only to the spiritual world, but to the material world as well. It is covered as well. From Krishna Loka, the bodily effulgence of Lord Krishna is distributed not only to the spiritual world, but to the material world as well. It is covered by matter, however, in the material world. In the spiritual world, there are innumerable Vaikuntha planets, and on each one, the Lord is the predominating deity. A devotee can be promoted to one such Vaikuntha planet to live with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Sharsti liberation, the opulence of the devotee is equal to the opulence of the Supreme Lord. Samipya means to be a personal associate of the Supreme Lord. In Sarupya liberation, the bodily features of the devotee are exactly like those of the Supreme Person, but for 2 or 3 symptoms found exclusively on the transcendental body of the Lord. Srivatsa, for example, the hair on the chest of the Lord, particularly distinguishes him from his devotees. A pure devotee does not accept these 5 kinds of spiritual existence, even if they are offered, and he certainly does not hanker after material benefits, which are all insignificant in comparison with spiritual benefits. When Prahlad Maharaj was offered some material benefit, he stated, "My Lord, I have seen that my father achieved all kinds of material benefits, and even the demigods were afraid of his opulence. But still, in a second, you have finished his life and all his material prosperity. For a devotee, there is no question of desiring any material or spiritual property. He simply aspires to serve the Lord. That is his highest happiness." Om Ajnana-timirandasya Gyananjana-shalakaya Chakshurum militam yena tasmai Shri Gurave namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam yena bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Sriyuta Parakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Namo Prabhupada Priyarasaya Jagannatha Yatra Murtaye Bhakta Sukaya Krishnot-kirtanena Nrisinghena Rakshataya Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Once again the verse. Salokya Shashti Samaipya Sarupyaikatvam Apyuta Diyamanam Nagrinanti Vinamatsivanam Janaha. A pure devotee does not accept any kind of liberation, Salokya, Sarshti, Samipya, Sarupya, or Ekatva, even though they are offered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is actually a very famous verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, where these 4 types of liberation are enumerated. They basically show that the devotee is of a very unique quality, or he has such a high treasure that he is disinterested even in the most valuable things. There's this very famous story of this householder, I think it's supposed to be Sanatana Goswami, but I might be wrong, who goes to see the sadhu, this great sadhu, and he comes to the sadhu and he's asking for the Chintamani. So Chintamani is the touchstone, philosopher's stone. One second, I have to adjust this. Because it keeps falling down. So he is coming for the philosopher's stone. So he comes to the sadhu and says, "I heard you have a philosopher's stone." And says, "Yes, I have one." So the philosopher's stone is supposed to be, not like in Harry Potter, the philosopher's stone actually is a stone that whatever it touches, it becomes gold. And ultimately, Chintamani is also the name for the spiritual world. One of Vaikuntha is one name, but also Chintamani Dhamma is one of the names for the spiritual world. That means in the spiritual world, everything is made out of touchstone. Every stone is a touchstone. So maybe you could speculate that, if there is any touchstone in the material world, it's a stone from the spiritual world. In any case, so this stone is supposed to be able to convert anything it touches into gold. So anything it touches, it becomes into gold. And this is, you will find this, you could say, a story about something like this in many different traditions. Some hand of gold that whatever it touches becomes gold, and then people become greedy and touch it themselves and then become gold. So the sadhu said, yes, I have a philosopher's stone, a touchstone. And the householder, he's like, because he was pushed by his wife, that's the story, The wife is, you go there, go get the touchstone, I already has the touchstone, Then we can have so much money, Go there. He's like, okay, I'll go, So the man goes, looks for the touchstone. And then he asked, can I have it? Would you lend it to me just for some time? And then the sadhu says, no, you can keep it. You can have it. You can have it. And then he asked, okay, where is it? Oh, it's there in the trash. It's there in the trash. It's with the rubbish. So he's like, what? With the rubbish? Yes, with the rubbish. You can just take it. You can go. So he goes back home, and brings the touchstone. They're like, everything becomes gold. Wow. And then the wife is asking, so tell me, how did you get it? So he tells the story. Yeah, he just had it in the trash. He just gave it to me without hesitation. He's like, what? He had it in the trash? So that means he must have something more valuable. If he's keeping the touchstone in the trash, he has something more valuable. Go back and get this, what is more valuable. So he goes back and he says, yeah, you were keeping this in the trash, so maybe you have something more valuable. And the sadhu says, yes, I have something more valuable, obviously. But I will only give it to you if you throw the touchstone into the river. So he's like, oh God, have a touchstone, So he's hesitating, but then he throws the touchstone into the river. And then he says, okay, now I'm ready to receive what's more valuable. And then the sadhu says, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. More or less like this. So he was shocked, of course, He was like, jump into the river. Where's the touchstone, But that's the true devotee. A true devotee has no use for has a different perspective altogether. Another similar story is with Gorkishore Das Babaji. Gorkishore Das Babaji, he announced that we will have a big feast. We will make a big feast. And everybody was getting really excited. Okay, Gorkishore Das Babaji has announced we will have a big festival. So we'll organize a big festival, and they're discussing, and then they ask him, okay, and how do we get the ingredients, And then Gorkishore Das Babaji says, we already have the ingredients. Japamala, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. So we have everything for the big festival, So that's the perspective of a true devotee. He technically doesn't need anything. Like Srila Prabhupada also, when we bought the land in Mayapur, Srila Prabhupada used to say, we can live in a simple hut, We can live in a simple hut, and the hut is still there. It's very nice, we have preserved that hut, the original hut in Mayapur, where there's the quarters for Prabhupada, and in the quarters where Gornitai were, and the devotees. And he said, but who will come to us if we only live in a small hut? So that's interesting how even there is this ideal of of a pure devotee. To make it accessible for the masses, we might start using all kinds of things and wealth. Like Prabhupada says, this famous purport in the Bhagavad Gita: for any endeavor, you need money, capital, and people. Now, money, people, and I forgot the third one. Land, or I forgot. I think land. He says land, money, and people. For any endeavor, you need those three. So also for this endeavor of spreading Krishna consciousness, we need those three. Prabhupada says in innumerable amounts. we can engage as many people as possible. We could use as much money as possible. But when a devotee is using it, he's using it for the purpose of serving the Lord. But of course, there's always, you could say, strings attached to it. Similar to the idea of Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, who said that an institution is poison for spirituality. So that's very interesting. An institution is poison for spirituality. Then why did he found the Gaudiya Math, and why did Prabhupada found ISKCON? Because the institution is a very powerful tool to systematically preach, teach, and benefit many people. So you can understand, you can consider it like this, if going to the spiritual world, living with Krishna, serving with Krishna in the same planet, having the same form of Krishna, a pure devotee might not even desire that, not even that opulence, not even that level of intimacy, with the Lord. Why? Because all of these opulences ultimately can distract you, can actually, it's not the highest level, It's really not the highest level. The highest level is when you are completely devoid of any desire, completely free of any second thoughts, any calculation for your own benefit. When we reach that level, that's the level of the gopis. The gopis of Vrindavan, they truly, not only that, even to their disadvantage, they were still ready to go to Krishna, even if it was disadvantageous for them. Materially speaking, or according to societal norms. They sacrificed everything so they could, please Krishna. And this kind of love that the gopis exhibited was so powerful and so unique that Krishna expressed it with these famous words, Na paraye ham, I cannot repay you. I cannot repay. I don't know how to reciprocate. You are so selfless, I don't know how to repay you. So this is the true level of devotion that a devotee at a relationship has. A pure devotee who has this level of devotion, where not any form of liberation is not interesting for him, you can reach that level where the Lord might speak those words. Na parayam. I don't know how to reciprocate. Your love is so pure. But of course, this is such a high level of spiritual realization that it might be artificial for us, or more certainly, it will be artificial for us. If we say, I don't want Salokya, I don't want Sarupya, I don't want to be liberated. It's artificial. How is it artificial? Because you don't have it. So you can only be renounced or detached of something if you have it. So Prabhupada very often, or also Rupa Goswami, criticizes the impersonalist idea of vairagya. Vairagya means detachment or renunciation, and vairagya basically means I reject everything. I want to be detached of everything. But Rupa Goswami says Falgu vairagya. This is actually wrong renunciation. Why? Because it is false renunciation because it doesn't belong to you. So how can you renounce something if it doesn't belong to you? It's artificial. It's artificial, and it's also dishonest. So therefore, what Rupa Goswami proposes, Singari Bhagavana ki jai. What Rupa Goswami proposes is Yukta Vairagya. So Yukta Vairagya means that everything we have, everything we possess, everything, every talent that we have, any object that might be available or device can be used in Krishna's service. And Srila Prabhupada goes as far as in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, he says, even an atom bomb can be used in the service of Krishna. I remember when I was, at one point I was searching in Googles for Prabhupada, and somehow there was this website, where they were criticizing Srila Prabhupada, how dangerous and extremist Prabhupada is, So, and then they put this quote there, Srila Prabhupada says, this guru says, even an atom bomb can be used in Krishna's service. And they use it as an example to show how extreme we are, how dangerous we are, But of course we understand the spirit, in which Prabhupada is saying it. And there might be a use, I don't know how and when, in which situation. But Prabhupada says, in the list, we can use a microphone, a car, and an atom bomb, everything in Krishna's service. And in the new version of the books, they soften it a little bit, So they put radio, cars, and rockets, So it's a little bit softer, rockets, not atom bombs, But the spirit of Prabhupada is very clear. Everything can be used in Krishna's service. Everything can be used in Krishna's service. And when we use it in Krishna's service, that is true renunciation. That is true renunciation. And the analogy that is given in this connection is that of the ability to catch a fish without getting wet. That's the level of difficulty in one sense, How to catch a fish without getting wet, Quite difficult. You have to be very expert, There are ways, It is possible. You have to be smart. How we use everything that we have, everything material, instead of rejecting it and being detached from it, we should learn to use it in Krishna's service. But at the same time, this is vairagya. It's yukta vairagya, It is vairagya. Vairagya means that you are not attached to it. So it's not so easy. Like Ramakana Maharaj, he often gives this lecture and talks about how we sometimes can use this principle of yukta vairagya to justify all kinds of luxuries we are using. Yukta vairagya Mercedes-Benz for Krishna. And yukta vairagya color TV for Krishna. Yukta vairagya newest iPad and newest laptop for Krishna, Yukta Vairagya, everything. So certainly you can use it for Krishna, but Ramakana Maharaj was always warning that if you don't know the art, how to catch a fish without getting wet, how to use material things without getting attached, we might end up getting attached to those material things and not really use them 100% for the service of Krishna, but also to some extent for our own pleasure and sense gratification. So there's the danger there as well. So therefore, Ramakana Maharaj's recommendation is that we should, you could say Bhaktivinoda Thakur and especially Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, they linked with the bridge of Yukta Vairagya the tradition of Gaudiya Vaishnavism to the modern world. They created that link. They made it possible for us, modern contemporary Western devotees, be able to, practice Krishna consciousness. Because before, Krishna consciousness was very much limited, to certain families and family traditions, and to, Babajis, who were very, very renounced. Literally, a Babaji has, a loincloth, what he's wearing, a loincloth over his shoulders, a pot of water, and a mala. That's it. So these were the Babaji saints, who were Vaishnavas at the time, and there were a few very pure, devotees. So applying this principle of Yukta Vairagya, Bhaktivinoda Thakur and also later his son Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, they started using everything in Krishna service. Even to the level that Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj installed this big printing press in the hall of Radhagandharvika Giridhari in the temple in Mayapur. So imagine in the temple room, this is the biggest room we have. So we will just put a big printing press here, big printing press, and we will print books for Krishna. And some of his disciples, they complained, It was like, Gurudev, the temple room is so loud now. This huge machine, is making noise. It's horrible, I mean, nowadays printing presses they're still loud, but imagine back then, it was really like a, loud, thumping, steaming machine, So they complained, and said, it's not nice for the deities, The deities are there and this big machine is, making so much noise in front of the deities. And what did Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said? The famous word, Brihad Mridanga. This printing press is the Brihad Mridanga. And he expanded on it, and Srila Prabhupada expanded on it later on as well, that all this book distribution endeavor we're doing is the Brihad Mridanga. The Mridanga that we play might be heard, in the office you can hear it, in the kitchen you can hear it less, outside you can hear it. If the windows are closed, a little bit, not too much, When the windows are open, the neighbors also hear our kirtan, But that's it, So the logic is when we print books, the Brihad Mridanga, this printing press, it will be heard in every corner of the world, Very powerful. This was this visionary idea that we can use everything in Krishna's service, and then the message of the Lord will be heard, everywhere. And we have some very amazing examples. Manida Prabhu tells how they used to travel to Spitzbergen. You know Spitzbergen? Spitzbergen is one of the most cold islands on the planet, It's very high. It's more north than Norway, So Hammerfest is this very northernmost city in Europe, and then there's some ocean, and then it's Spitzbergen. An island. An icy, cold, polar island, Spitzbergen. So the Sankirtan devotees used to go to Spitzbergen. Why? Because in Spitzbergen was the only place where Soviet planes used to land, and in Western territory. And it was kind of like a free zone for scientists, and so they used to come there with planes. So the devotees used to go to the airport. They used to buy a ticket, for this plane, and they would just go in and put books everywhere, and then get out of the plane again, and then wait for the next plane, and then again, So that's how they distributed books to beyond the Iron Curtain. So the Brihad Mridanga, not even the Iron Curtain of the Soviets, the evil communist bloc, not even that could stop the books of Srila Prabhupada. And they're very amazing stories how when the devotees finally were free to practice beginning of the 90s, when they went beyond the Urals, means like in Siberia, they met many devotees, who had received these books somehow. Another trick they used to do is on ships also, and they printed all the books in like tiny format, small format, like this, like a Bhagavad Gita like this, and Bhagavatam, and I forgot which books they all had, but all the books were printed in tiny format, so they could be bundled, in small bags, and then they would throw them into the ships, that were docking somewhere, Soviet ships, and that's how we infiltrated the Soviet Union. So the Brihad Mridanga way, went all the way into the Soviet Union, and many devotees were already practicing, and it was it's incredible the whole story of how Krishna consciousness, expanded even beyond the Iron Curtain. It's a very unique story. Yes, so everything can be used in Krishna's service, but at the same time, we should be careful, about ugra karma. Ugra karma. So ugra karma is, you could say, a Sanskrit term that can be used for technology. Ugra karma, literally it means, you could say aggressive or destructive action. And that's what modern technology is. It's very loud. It's not good for the environment. Plastic, oil. We live in an oil society. We are oil junkies. That's how some scientists described it, our society is an oil junkie, We cannot stop living without oil. We need oil, The oil price, changes, big catastrophe, So all of this is ugra karma. All of this is ugra karma, and we should understand why we are using it. We are using it to extinguish fire. That's the analogy Prabhupada gives, that you can use fire to extinguish fire. If there's a big fire, you can put many small fires, around that big fire, and because the fires require oxygen, to burn, if you put many small fires, those small fires will consume the oxygen and extinguish the main fire. So this is used very often, when there's big forests, then they do this, the small pockets when they try to extinguish the fire. So Prabhupada uses very often this analogy to say that we are using this modern technology or anything material ultimately not for a material aim. We're using it to extinguish material, you could say, existence, but also in a different way. The culture that Prabhupada is proposing is a culture that is very much in touch with nature. So even we are using nowadays all kinds of machines and cars and whatnot. Our ideal is not that. Our ideal is not a society full of cars and modern technology and skyscrapers. Prabhupada very often predicted that those skyscrapers will be, will collapse. At one point, everything will collapse. So we don't know exactly when that might happen, but some people say maybe China will be one of a very good example. China actually has built in the last 10 years more skyscrapers than the rest of the world in the last 100 years. That's how many buildings they have built, And they've built them so fast, they're very crappy, Many of them, most of them. So it wouldn't be a surprise if they collapse. Many of them are collapsing already, or shaking. Or empty, yeah. Whole cities, just empty. So this is like this empty cities of China might be a good example of how when there is just greed, so much energy is wasted, for nothing, So certainly we should be able to use this energy for a much higher purpose, It can be used, but the point I was trying to make is that we should always remain vairagya, We should always have the highest aim in sight. Otherwise, very easily we become trapped, We become attached, we become entangled, And in the worst case, we become a mockery, of spiritual practice, because anybody who's you could say a little bit sensitive, they might realize this person is not really detached, they're pretending to be yukta vairagis, but actually in reality they're fully attached, to everything they're using. But you could say from a different point of view. You could also say that, like, I think you were mentioning in your lecture that, it seems that we're not expecting the whole world to become pure devotees or Brahmins, So there will be different stages, different levels of people's involvement with spirituality or Krishna consciousness, more specifically. And you could say we have to be lenient towards those as well, Prabhupada in many places in his purports, he actually shows a lot of leniency towards, we could say, the masses, So there is a possibility because if we are to become relevant for the masses, we have to make this, how do you say, Spagat in German? Like when you extend your legs like this. Stretch, like full flat stretch, it's a stretch. When you try to combine, keeping the highest ideals and at the same time being very lenient, and it's sometimes not so easy how to know when to do what, when to demand, discipline and when to be lenient, It's an art, it's an art. Because we have to be disciplined to encourage the highest potential of everyone, and to promote the ideals and not lose the ideals out of sight. But we have to be lenient at the same time to not discourage people. Very high ideals can be very discouraging for people. I remember when I was a brahmachari, we were in the Polish tour in Poland, and we were a group of brahmacharis, disciples of Nadyuna Maharaj, maybe, I don't know, we were all Gurukulis as well, So we were like, yeah, we are the Gurukuli brahmachari squad, And then we said, okay, we should do some special program, And if you have been to the Polish tour, it's very taxing, It's every day 7 hours of Harinam, then 5 hours of program, and then driving back with the bus, sometimes an hour, sometimes 2 hours, hour and a half, back to the base, getting some leftover pakoras, going to sleep, waking up in the morning, chanting your rounds, morning program, lecture, and then again Harinam 7 hours, and then again everything every day, and that 50 times, over the whole summer. So, but we said, we should still do some special endeavor. We will be there at Mangalartik, because the program there starts at 7:15. But we decided, no, we will start at 4 o'clock, despite everything else, and I was the one pushing it, and we didn't last long. So like that, if we are too strict, if we are too idealistic, we might discourage ourselves, So we have to learn this art to be, the main thing is to keep the ideal never out of sight, but at the same time be honest what your abilities, what your position is, what your attachments are, in order to be able to be properly engaged, while still always looking at the goal, the ideal. And for this purpose, the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is perfect, because Krishna is showing how we should apply this. So the method is to, in the beginning, always try for the highest, Shoot for the rhinoceros, Prabhupada used to say, Try to be the ideal, Try to be the ideal. Everything, as it is written, as Prabhupada is, proposing, try to be the ideal, nectar of instruction, just live by it. Try to be this ideal. And then soon you might realize, I can't do it, So Krishna says, of course, in the Bhagavad Gita, always think of me, full of devotion, full of, concentration, just, absorb yourself in samadhi, in thought of me, be connected with me, always. So very soon we'll realize, we can't do that, we're not there. So then Krishna, after establishing the highest ideal, he becomes lenient. And he says, okay, if you can't do that, no problem. Then you practice bhakti yoga. There are some rules and regulations, that can help you to remember me, in all your activities. And then he becomes even more lenient. He says, if you can't do that, no problem. If you can't all day just chant and worship and pray to me and do bhakti yoga directly, then work for me. Work for me. Plow the land, build a temple, do some practical work for me. And then he says, if that's too much, to just work all day for Krishna and chant and no material security, then okay, work. Do whatever you want, but some part of your fruits of your action, that you should give in donation to me. And then he's even more lenient. If you can't do that, if you also don't want to give me your money, okay, no problem, And there Prabhupada even says that it's very purifying to give donations. Even if you don't want to donate it to a spiritual cause, still we should donate. It's very interesting. Usually Prabhupada is very critical of philanthropic endeavors, These philanthropic endeavors generally only cater for the body, and the best example is hospitals, When the temple in Delhi was inaugurated, the big temple, ISKCON temple in Delhi, Prita Prabhu was interviewed, and typical, left-wing liberal question: why would you spend so much money for a temple? Useless, just outrageous, overspending of money just for a prestige building, kind of like, critique. And Prithu Prabhu answered very smartly. I'm just, paraphrasing, but basically he said, because basically they said, yeah, why didn't you use this money to build hospitals? Much better, so good for the people, very compassionate, those who are sick, and injured, we should heal them, much better than the temple. Much money, much better, much not well spent money, you could say, Better, it would be better spent if you spend it on something, charitable, philanthropic. And then Prithu Prabhu said, yes, maybe, but the reality is that when you go to a hospital, anybody can go to a hospital, even a big criminal, he just got shot. Where did he go? To the hospital, and he will be cured, and then when he's, strong again, he'll go back to criming, So what's the use, You only heal the body, You didn't heal his consciousness. You didn't reform him. So that's what the temple is doing. The temple is really curing people. So therefore it's more valuable, more important. A hospital, it's nice. We also need them, of course. But it's not the best investment, So I forgot what I wanted to say now. What did I say before that?
The first chapter, the levels of devotion status, and then you got to the end, giving walking and giving charity.
Yes, thank you. So, usually Prabhupada is very critical about, philanthropic, work, like building hospitals. It's good, it's pious, but it's not really, the ideal. And he also counts it on the list of expansions of the false ego, humanism, philanthropism, all of this is a form of ego also. But in this purport, Srila Prabhupada says in the Bhagavad Gita that you should donate, even to something philanthropic if you don't want to donate for something spiritual. But you should donate because giving away, your hard-earned money is very purifying. We should always practice detachment. And then Krishna says, you can also develop knowledge. You should develop knowledge, you should develop understanding, you should know what the highest goal is, and then you can, retrace those steps back to the ideal. So I think the 12th chapter is a very good, musta, wie sagt man musta? Like a blueprint, of how to be lenient and not lose the ideal out of sight at the same time. So we try for the ideal, and then we should be honest to step back until you come to a level where here I'm safe, here I'm secure, and now I can try to go back up again. So this was, you could say also, this is what we try to do in the Brahmachari ashram. As a Brahmachari, you try to live the ideal life, detached, renounced, self-controlled, simple, and you have to see, how long is it real, and when it's not real anymore, you should be honest, and step back, and find a position where you're well established, and from this position, then again, strive for true detachment. Yes. What time is it? It's 1:45 already. So I think I'll stop here, but maybe there are some questions, comments, criticism, additions. Yes.
I had a thought on what you said about Yukta Vairagya and also renunciation, where we came around in the end and again. Because Yukta Vairagya can be only done if you really renounced. Because if you're a grihasta or you do karma yoga, means you're creating karma, and then you connect it with the Lord and make it to yoga. So in this way it gets purified, right? So because most of us, even if we have some gadget, we are kind of proud of it, and it's kind of a status symbol. Oh, what computer you have? Oh, you you have an apple, right? I also, whatever is kind of a, it becomes like a status symbol. If you're in the Grihastha ashram somewhere, or then you use this because you used to do it. You create karma, you use karma, and then you connect it, and it becomes yoga. So in this way, it's much more easier to do yukta vairagya, because if you do this in the renounced order, you immediately become contaminated. It tracks you down, because with everything comes karma. You do something, you go to work, you get some money. This money is loaded with karma.
Yeah.
And if you use it, you enjoy it. What you as Grihastha you have to do, you get reactions for it. But by giving it around, whatever you give also karma. So it's like a big cycle. And if you take this karma cycle and somehow offer it to the Lord, as you described, then it gets purified, and you become less and less contaminated, because you also get the idea, actually there it belongs. One gets uplifted more or less. But if you do it in renounced order, and this is what we see nowadays also, if you do it in renounced order, if you enjoy it, then the karma stocks on you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I'll paraphrase it, but I think I understand it. So I think what you're saying is that when you are, honestly situated, you are creating karma by working, you get money, and then you might have, cars, gadgets, whatever you have, a house, many things. And then you, by practicing karma yoga, because karma yoga, Prabhupada very often says, karma yoga, the more it becomes selfless, it becomes bhakti yoga. There's nishkama yoga and sakama yoga. So in the beginning, karma yoga is mixed with desires. It's mixed. You're practicing karma yoga, but it's mixed with desires. And when you're practicing, when it's nishkama karma yoga, it's actually bhakti yoga. It's pure. It's already fully yukta vairagya, you could say. And what you're saying is that in a sannyasi's position, it's much more dangerous, because technically, sannyasi or somebody who's renounced, they should be expected to fully use it only in the service of the Lord. If they tend to enjoy it, it's already, you could say, a fall down, or the beginning, you could say, of the fall down. Whereas the Grihastha is in a position where he is, you could say, honestly saying, yes, I'm using this for, for my family, for my, Prabhupada says the Grihastha has the license, or how does Prabhupada say it? License for sense enjoyment, So the license for sense enjoyment, or pleasure is there in the Grihastha ashram. All the other ashrams are not meant for that, actually. So the moment, whatever you might have, you're using just for your own pleasure and not really for the service, then it becomes material. And this is really, but this is not external. It's something very, very, very internal, because there are some examples of, what is his name? What is his name? Shikimahiti, was it? He was massaging young girls. Ramananda Roy. Yeah, Ramananda Roy was massaging. Yeah, and Shikimahiti he was just enjoying opulence. So externally, what's the Shikimahiti? Pundarika Vidyanidhi. Okay, I'm mixing everything up today. He's also cool, yeah. I like Shikimahiti as well. No, but Pundarika Vidyanidhi, that's the name I was looking for. He was externally, it looked that he was enjoying life, He had this big, like a Arab, shisha tent, all discussions and, very nice pipes and lamps and a lot of food, and, he was just lying there, nice music was being played, and, so Godara Pandit was, like this materialist, But then internally, he was actually completely absorbed in he was a pure devotee, And also Ramananda Roy, he used to massage young girls, the dancers, But he was not disturbed or perturbed by it. So it's not external, It's not external. It's really what the intention is ultimately. So we have to be a little bit careful to judge straight away, you know. If somebody might be, you know, having a lot of opulence, you know, what really ultimately counts is what is the mood, you know, what is the mood, what is their dedication, what is their level of, you know, attachment to Krishna. That's what really counts. Because externally, it might look like a materialist, you know, or like a, you could say, preposterous, you know, like, or like too opulent, you know, for a sannyasi or for a spiritualist. But as a general rule of thumb, of course, there is danger with it. What I was saying in the beginning of the lecture, what Kamakana Maharaj was saying, there is a danger, you know. Ugra karma can be used in Krishna service, but it also will leave a trace, you know. It will leave a trace if you use Ugra karma. Yeah. Yes. Is that okay? Yeah. Prabhu.
Just to link those points, Prabhu, the point of pure devotion being a state whereby the cities or other forms of liberation are not regarded as valuable. So a more applicable version of that might be that we, however, as in a neophyte stage or conditioned state, we may still want some kind of quid pro quo from devotional service, from being at a particular temple. So like a tainted version of that. So for instance, I want to stay at this temple because I got a good chance of getting initiated soon, or I want to stay at this temple because they got a program that suits, or I like the geography. So this also seems to be related to the second point of your lecture, which was very nice. And that was whether that sort of quid pro quo mentality might help one to become well established. And could you please further define what it means to be, what are the symptoms rather, of being well established or honestly situated?
Yeah. So, like Prabhupada's magazine was, he called his magazine Back to Godhead. You know? So, in the beginning, it's certainly important to have some kind of motivation. You know? Just like it said, it's better to be in the mode of passion than be in the mode of ignorance. You know? In the mode of ignorance, we are lethargic, we are lazy, we are depressed, we are hopeless. In the mode of passion, we have, you know, hopes, you know, activity, endeavor. You know? So in the beginning, it's very important that we want to become free of material existence. And Prabhupada encourages us so much in his purpose, you know. We should become free of material existence. We should, you know, pray to, you know, for Krishna to liberate us to, you know. So basically, you know, all of this, you know, we want this, you know. We want to go to the spiritual world. We want to become free of material existence. And as we progress, or you could say this level of detachment from all of this is only reached really when you are at the highest level, you know. Like you say, when you have it, then you can detach, then you can say, I don't want it. So this was the first one I wanted to make. So that it is important in the beginning of our spiritual practice to have something to motivate us, you know. You know, I'm suffering, you know. Is this going to help me? Yes. Okay, then I'm going to chant, you know. So like that, you know. Or is this going to help me out of trouble? Yes, you know. Is this going to prevent me from being an addict? Yes. Okay, then I'm going to try it, you know. So like that, in the beginning, or it might be any like more subtle things as well, but like you said, you know, I like this temple, you know, it's a very nice landscape, it's fresh air here, okay, I'm moving to this temple, you know. Or this temple president likes me, so he might recommend this sooner than the other temple president, so I'm going to go to this temple. So we want to achieve something, and this is a material motivation that gets us initiated in the process, but does not lead us to the ultimate goal. Because usually what happens is, as soon as this original motivation is fulfilled, then we come to a point where we are confused, you know. So very often devotees will reach that point sooner or later, where you're like, why I'm doing this actually, you know? Who is Krishna, you know? Is Krishna really there, you know? Because you reach a point where your original motivations and inspirations and whatever motivated you to practice, it was fulfilled, it's done, and now what, you know? So that's why you need to search, you know, deeper, what is the real, then you need to go to the next step. Where Prabhupada says that out of the 4 people who starts a spiritual practice, 3 motivations need to be purified sooner than later. Those who are seeking money or alleviation of pain, or who are just curious, you know. Those 3 motivations need to be cleaned out very soon. But even jnana, knowing, you know, the one who's searching for the truth, even at one point, even that needs to be, you know, we don't want to control Krishna by knowing him, you know, we want to serve him. You know? But the second part of your question was more focused on being honest and how to be well established. I don't think I have a simple answer for that, because it's still something we're figuring out, I think. As a society, for sure, you know, how to help everyone be properly established, you know. Like you might have a young bhakta, you know, and he's very enthusiastic, you know. So what do we tell him, you know? Yes, become a brahmachari, go on book distribution, surrender yourself to Krishna. Or no, do an apprenticeship, you know, then you have some apprenticeship. You do it for 2-3 years, and then you can still, if you want, you know, surrender to, like, become fully established, and sometimes difficult to know what is exactly the best, you know, for the person, you know. Is this better? Because maybe he will do for 3 years Sankirtan, and then he might be like, oh, no, I should have started doing my apprenticeship earlier, now I have to start now, you know. So we really have to look into the motivation of the, what's motivating the person, and I guess assess also, honestly, you know, what's, you know, if somebody really has the potential to fully surrender to Krishna, of course they should do it, you know. They should try it, you know. But always keeping in mind that, you know, yeah, it's better to have well-established people than a lot of pretense, you know. So sometimes it happens, you know, that we have, because the ideals are so high, we tend to pretend, you know. We tend to pretend because, like, we try to be something we might not be yet, you know. So I think in this connection is very, very important, of course, also the recommendation of Rupa Goswami, the Guhyam Akyati Prichati, you know, to share your secrets, you know, your struggles, honestly, you know, your realizations, of course, also, you know, with friends, with equals. Share your struggles so that you have somebody who is, you know, who is aware, you know, what you're dealing with. Otherwise, we might be living in this, you know, this tension builds, you know, pretending to be something externally, but internally, you know, maybe I don't even believe in Krishna, you know, maybe I, you know, have a doubt, you know, and you don't dare to express the doubt, because if you say, is Krishna really God? Everybody's like, oh, how could you say that? You know, heretic. Get out of our society. This is a society for Krishna consciousness. If you're not Krishna conscious, you're not welcome here, you know. But, you know, doubts are normal, you know. Actually, it's a sign of intelligence as well, to have doubts. So if you have doubts, we need to clear them. I know, that's all I can say, I think.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Just, oh, you want to...
Hare Krishna. Hast du gesagt, dass jeder soll Krishna-Bewusstsein praktizieren von der Ebene, auf welcher sie befindet? Also wenn bin ich qualifiziert jetzt dafür und dafür, dann mache ich das und das. Und wenn habe ich mehrere Qualifikationen, dann mache ich wieder andere Dinge. Aber ehrlich gesagt, unsere einzige Qualifikation ist Prabhupada, und dann ist mir auch solche Geschichte vorgefallen. Ich weiß nicht, ob du das kennst, über den kleinen Vogel, was hat seine Eier im Ozean verloren. Und er hat versucht, die Eier von dem Ozean rauszuholen, damit dass er den Ozean vermeidet irgendwie. Und er ist einfach ausgelacht geblieben von der Umgebung, und dann hat davon selbst so Garuda gehört, und er ist zu ihm geflogen und hat die Eier gerettet. Und ja, was ich will damit sagen, ist, dass wir haben sehr kleine Vertrauen Krishna und ja, deswegen wir schauen auf uns, wo wir sind gerade, ja, was wir können erreichen oder ich weiß nicht was alles. Aber ehrlich gesagt, es geht überhaupt nicht um uns, aber es geht um Krishna, weil wenn Krishna sieht, dass wir uns bemühen, dann er kann auch Unmögliches möglich machen.
Okay, interessanter Punkt. So repeat it in English. So she was saying basically, just like the analogy or the example of the story of the small bird trying to retrieve its eggs from the ocean, and it was, trying to, empty the ocean, the small birds, and then, of course, it's a hopeless endeavor, and Garuda, hearing his determination, came and helped. So she's saying, we're actually dependent on Prabhupada. Prabhupada is our Garuda. Prabhupada is our Garuda, who came to rescue us. So that's true that we all we're made out is out of mercy. We are dependent on the mercy of the pure devotees to progress, and the qualification is to have the ability to gain from that mercy that we have received. So there's this famous story of Vishnujan Maharaj asking Srila Prabhupada, "Why are you giving me so much mercy?" Because he felt very blessed by Srila Prabhupada, and he was, very ecstatic, inspiring so many people, and so he asked Prabhupada, "Why are you giving so much mercy?" And then Prabhupada's simple answer was, "Because you're taking it. You're taking the mercy." So the mercy is there, but our ability to take it is not always there. Or our determination, like the small bird. The small bird was just determined, beyond reason, to get his eggs because he really wanted it. So this is called laulyam. If we have this greed, that we want Krishna and we really, that's all we want, then of course everything is possible. Bhakti is not dependent on anything material. The problem we have, or the dilemma we have, is our ability to trust, our ability to surrender, our ability to fully make ourselves dependent on Krishna. That's where we are lacking. It's like Srinivas Thakur and his family. He was not working, but he always had enough. So the question was placed, how do you do it? You're not working. Where do you get all this? He said, Krishna will provide me. Krishna will provide for me. I have full trust. And if he doesn't provide me for 1 day, then we fast. And he doesn't provide for 2 days, I fast. And 3 days I fast. On the 4th day, I jump in the Ganga. So if you have that level of trust, generally our trust tends to be like this analogy of this person who is on a roof and he slips and he just manages to grab the border of the roof, with one hand, and he's dangling from this roof, and then he prays, "God help me, nobody can help me except God, and then he hears this voice, says, "I'm here, my son, just let go, I'll catch you." And then the person hanging says, "Could you touch me first, then I'll let go." So there's no trust. So, Shraddha is very powerful. If we have Shraddha, the more we have trust, we can, be free of, anxieties ultimately, because we place our trust in Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Gantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Okay.